if you even accept it to be the reality, it's written in a context as if an elf who might not know everything wrote the Silmarillion. So you can't even believe the author. It's actually really annoying.
It's actually, but I actually find it so beautiful because
Yeah, that's
we
cool.
are talking about them as if we are reading their version of the mythology of events, right?
Yeah,
That's
because
ultimately what it's kind of supposed to be.
Tolkien was basing this, and this is just me spouting out, kind of opinions, as if you found somebody at the Library of Alexandria who was writing about stuff hundreds of years before his own time. Sure, he might have some primary source of information, secondary source of information, whatever, but you can't really trust this author. He wasn't there, right? He doesn't know for sure. It's the same thing with the Silmarillion. Tolkien is literally writing in that sense, which is very interesting, and it shows his deep understanding of history. Back to the elves. So the elves, the first sundering is those who start this journey. We'll call it the journey just going west. They're going to be called the Eldar going forward. The ones who just stay back and they don't even bother to go looking for these lights, they're called the Avarî. And you can think of them as dark elves. For those of you who read other fantasy things like Elder Scrolls and all that stuff, they're not that kind of dark elf.
Evil.
It's completely different. Yeah. It's very
Yeah,
different.
I mean, you think of Dark Elves with, like, say, Elder Scrolls, you think of it in Warhammer, like, the
Exactly.
Drakari,
Yeah. World of
or you think of
Warcraft.
even,
Yeah.
like, how you see them in, shit, got this one great franchise. Oh, yeah, you know how they show the Dark Elves in, Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Yes.
They're
That's
not
actually, that was a good one.
evil. They're not evil, right? Because in these factions, they are pretty much the evil faction, the way
Yeah.
they're portrayed and they operate. These are just called Dark Elves because they do not seek out the light of Valinor.
Yeah. They live under the moon. And Tolkien based his elves off of, it's a blend of Norse with some like kind of things hitting at Celtism and all sorts of other things. A lot of stuff that has to do with the cultures in modern day Finland and in the Finnish language, which is over my head completely. But yeah, his version of elves is not what we think of really in other fantasy novels today. They've really changed that. So, anyways, the Avarî, they basically leave them aside for now. They're not really relevant for 99% of Tolkien's work. There are a few Avarî that like are kind of famous, but they're not really present, really. The Eldar, they're at the front stage. For the Eldar, there's three sunderings that are important. There's the Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Telerin. Basically, to brutally summarize, the Vanyar, they are like the first ones to make the journey. They go to the Undying Lands. The Noldor are the second ones.
You could call them the most eager of the lot.
Yeah. The Vanyar and the Noldor, they all heed the call and they go to the Undying Lands. The Telerin don't all heed the call. Actually, the majority don't. Some of them do heed the call. They're called the Famari, and they're kind of like a seafaring type of elf people that live on this kind of little special island and on the mainland of the Undying Lands. Let's put aside the Noldor and the Vanya for now because the Telerin are kind of more important. Those of the Telerin that decide to stay back, they end up forming other groups and other groups. There's the Sindar and the Nandor, who will become eventually in the Third Age the Sylvian elves and the Lacandi. So we're talking like Legolas's, the Mirkwood Forest elves and stuff. Of the Sindar, there's the Aethrim, the Falachim, and the Elves of Mithim, and it gets much more confusing because this goes into the Second Age and the Third Ages, but more or less the elves of Lothlorien and Mirkwood are all kind of the descendants of these ones.
So they descend from the Telerin.
Yes. And one thing that I'll note to the audience that many people might not know, because I had to do extensive information on the military aspect of Tolkien's every faction in Tolkien's world. Tolkien had this very weird thing where every time he sunders all the races, and all the races have their sunderings, like they're almost identical. When you look at men have the houses of men. There's the elves that we're showing here. For the dwarfs, there's the houses of the dwarfs, although we don't know much about most of them. Every time there's a sundering, these groups of elves or men or dwarfs, whatever it might be, have unique preferences culturally, and this has to do with their weapons. So it's interesting. Tolkien just randomly writes the Vanyar, they like spears. The Noldor, they like swords. The Teleri, they like bows. The same thing with the houses of men.
Uh,
You find this, yeah.
I guess it's kind of like makes sense, right? Because Legolas is not good with a sword.
Yeah. And the Nandor are good with axes. So, yeah, there are elves who use axes. That's another thing. And elves hunt and eat meat. That's something a lot of people find bizarre. It seems like they appear like they're vegetarians or not.
Yeah, but I think that makes sense, right? Because when you see like in the start of the Fellowship in the War of the Last Alliance, where you see the half of the Sylvian the High Elf army, they have those double pole arms,
Yeah.
and I guess that's the mostly the uh, Vanyar elves that we would see, like at least those they were the guys in the front line. And later, when in the cinematics where we see Sauron appear, you could see several elves with swords and shields.
Yeah.
So I guess they would be the Noldor.
And the Vanya are only, to my knowledge, they only come to Middle Earth in the War of Wrath. They never come back. So the Vanyar are almost not existent. They're not present. The Noldor are some of the most present aside from the Teleri. And of the Noldor, there is a further sundering. There are the Noldor in exile and the Noldor that stay in Aman.
Oh, I think now, Greg, since I guess since we if we're finished with this, like the Sundering of the Elves, I think we should talk about the real villain of the first stage.
Okay, here. So let me just stop sharing.
You
Sorry,
want
it's
me
yeah,
to
the
bring up?
interface for Riverside is different. Okay, there we go.
You want me to get the image up?
Yeah, sure. You can use whatever image you like.
All right. Yep, we have him.
Oh, so you want to talk about Feanor?
Yeah, like as you also described it, he's like a real villain.
So I want to start off by saying this is something that I think people will find interesting. Tolkien believe well, maybe it's too harsh to say this. Tolkien's work presents evil being real. There is evil and there is good. So it's not a gray world like all of our literature and all of our movies and stories today always seems to have this motivation for why a good person becomes evil, whatever. There is just evil and such. Feanor represents what was good but becomes evil. So I guess he does fit modern contemporary stuff. But Feanor is
But
a group of evil beings in Tolkien's Legendarium. He's alongside Saruman, Melkor, Sauron, and Feanor is one of the OG, like the original evils. So people find that interesting, but I mean, if you read into him, it's quite obvious. He's like a fallen angel type. Yeah,
but I think like if you were to even attribute some characteristic or trait onto what causes it, it's pride for
but
Feanor.
He is Melkor. He's the
Yeah.
first. He's the greatest amongst his group of the Noldor. And when he feels threatened by his brother Fingolfin, who he thinks might usurp him, ironically because Melkor is lying to him and giving this idea, he becomes jealous, and this leads to rage, and he wants to prove himself. So he is just the elven version of Melkor in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Also, daddy issues again.
Yeah, no, that's it. He fears that when his dad, who's Finwë, will be gone, that he'll be usurped by Fingolfin, and this is all lies, of course, that Melkor, spread into him.
Um,
But
but
yeah,
it's actually kind of true because it is known that even when the Noldor were in Valinor, a lot of them they respected Feanor, but it is kind of like that respect that you would put for someone having power or
yeah,
an accomplishment.